I worked night security at Blackwood County School for 19 years, long enough to know the building changed after dark. During the day, it was just another old school in eastern Kentucky. Old brick walls, flickering fluorescent lights, kids running through crowded hallways, teachers complaining about broken heaters and leaking pipes. Normal. That's the strange part, because nothing about that place felt dangerous in daylight. But at night, you could hear people inside, even when you knew you were alone. I remember walking those hallways after midnight, hearing a chair scrape somewhere upstairs, slow, wood against tile, then silence, the kind of silence that makes you stop walking too. Sometimes my flashlight would shake in my hand, not because I was cold, because something in the building felt aware of me. I'd hear footsteps above the ceiling, not running, not hiding, just pacing slowly in the dark, like someone waiting for me to notice them. And every now and then, the old school bell would ring, one deep metallic sound echoing through the halls, even though the bell had been disconnected for decades. I once watched a classroom door open by itself at the end of the second floor hallway, very slowly, no wind, no sound, just darkness inside the room, waiting. People in Briar's Hollow say the school is haunted. They're wrong. Haunted things feel dead. Blackwood County School never felt dead to me. It felt awake. You're listening to Oculus Owl. Don't be alone. The owl is watching. Briar's Hollow sits deep in the Appalachian hills of eastern Kentucky. One road in, one road out. Most people driving through that part of the country never even notice the town. Fog settles low between the trees every morning. Old wooden houses lean slightly with age. Rusted fences disappear into overgrown fields. The coal mines around the area shut down years ago. Most younger families left after that. The ones who stayed behind learned to live quietly. And in Briar's Hollow, people avoid talking about certain places after dark. Blackwood County School is one of them. The school sits near the edge of town beside abandoned mining land and dense forest that stretches for miles through the hills. 3 stories tall, old red brick, long black windows staring out toward the woods. During the daytime, it feels ordinary. Kids running through hallways, teachers carrying stacks of papers, basketballs echoing inside the gymnasium. But once the sun starts going down, people leave fast. Even the teachers never stay later than necessary during winter months. Nobody says why directly. They just lock their classrooms, avoid eye contact, and head home before dark settles over the hills. I used to think it was superstition, small town nonsense. I was a practical man back then. Former military, spent most of my life dealing with real problems, real fear. Ghost stories didn't interest me. And when I first took the night security job at Blackwood County School, I thought the locals were exaggerating. Every night followed the same routine. Check classroom locks, walk the gymnasium, inspect the boiler room, turn off lights wing by wing, simple work, quiet work. At first, that quiet felt peaceful. The school always smelled the same at night: dust, wet wood, old paper. And beneath all of it, something earthy, like damp soil trapped underneath the floors. Sometimes I'd stand alone in the hallway, hearing nothing except the hum of fluorescent lights above me, and somehow, that silence felt heavier than noise. Then the footsteps started. It happened during my 3rd month working there. Cold rain outside, wind shaking tree branches against the windows. I was locking doors on the 1st floor when I heard someone walking slowly above me on the 2nd floor. Not running, not sneaking, walking. 1 step at a time. I stopped moving immediately. The footsteps stopped too. That part bothered me more than the sound itself, because it felt deliberate, like whoever was upstairs knew I had noticed them. I grabbed my flashlight and headed upstairs. 2nd floor hallway was empty. No students, no teachers, no movement anywhere, just rows of dark classrooms and old fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I checked every room. Nothing. Then while turning back toward the stairwell, I heard one final step directly above me. Not in front of me, not behind me, above me, like someone was standing inside the ceiling. After that night, things became harder to explain. A few weeks later, I heard children whispering inside classroom 214, very softly, repeating multiplication tables, calm, rhythmic, like students reciting lessons together. The room was locked. I remember standing outside the door, listening for nearly 30 seconds before unlocking it. The moment the door opened, the voices stopped. The classroom was empty, every desk untouched, every chair pushed in neatly, but chalk dust was still drifting slowly through the air near the board. Fresh, like someone had been writing moments earlier. I searched the room twice before leaving. Nobody there. That's when I stopped laughing at the stories people told about the school. But the thing that truly changed how I saw Blackwood County School was the bell. The old school bell hadn't worked in decades. Everyone knew that. The wiring had been removed years before I even started there. Then one stormy night, during heavy rain, the bell rang. One deep metallic sound echoing through the building. Every light flickered once. The floor beneath my feet vibrated slightly, and then the school became completely silent. Not normal silence, not nighttime silence, dead silence. The kind that makes your ears strain for any sound at all. No humming lights, no rain against windows, no building creaks, nothing. I remember standing perfectly still in the hallway, feeling like the entire building was waiting for something. That's when I finally understood why the people in Briar's Hollow feared the place. Because everybody in town remembered what happened there in the late 1950s. A brutal winter storm trapped several children and one teacher inside Blackwood County School overnight. Roads buried under snow, power lines down across the county. By morning, they were gone. The exits were still locked from the inside. No broken windows, no footprints outside, no evidence anyone had left the building at all. Search teams spent weeks combing the forests and abandoned mining lands surrounding the school. Nothing was ever found. After a while, the town stopped discussing it publicly. But stories still survived in whispers. Teachers hearing voices after dark, students seeing figures standing inside unused classrooms, janitors refusing to work night shifts alone, and sometimes, late during storms, the school bell ringing by itself. I tried not to think about any of that, tried to focus on my job. Then one night near the end of winter, I found something sitting on a desk in classroom 210, an old notebook. The cover was soaked with fresh mud, like it had just been pulled from the ground. I opened it carefully. Inside were faded assignments written in a child's handwriting, math problems, vocabulary words, drawings in the margins. The name on the front belonged to one of the missing children from the 1950s. My hands started shaking before I even reached the last page, because written across the paper again and again, in darker pencil marks pressed hard enough to tear the page, was one sentence. Something is underneath us. After finding the notebook, I stopped sleeping properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that sentence written across the page. Something is underneath us. And the worst part was, I already believed it. A few nights later, another storm rolled into Briar's Hollow. Hard rain, strong enough to bend the trees outside the school, thunder shaking the hills of eastern Kentucky like distant explosions. Most of the town lost power before midnight, but Blackwood County School still had emergency electricity running through parts of the building. I sat in the security office for a long time staring at the rain hitting the windows, thinking about leaving early, thinking maybe the people in town were smarter than me all along. Then I heard singing upstairs, soft, children's voices, not loud enough to understand the words, just enough to know they were singing together. I grabbed my flashlight immediately, and the moment I stepped into the hallway, the school felt different. Not empty anymore, occupied. The second floor was colder than usual, cold enough that my flashlight beam looked pale in the air. The singing stopped the moment I reached the top stair. Then I noticed the hallway ahead of me. It wasn't right. The wallpaper was different. Dark green with faded patterns peeling off the walls. The lockers looked older too. Rust covering the metal doors, dust thick across the floor. I stood there confused for several seconds, trying to understand how an entire section of the school could suddenly look decades older overnight. The lights overhead weren't fluorescent anymore. Weak yellow bulbs hung from long wires, swinging slightly even though there was no wind, and the smell, wet wood, dust, mold, like the hallway had been sealed away for 50 years. Then I saw the handprints on the walls. Small handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the wallpaper like children had been trying to claw their way out. At the far end of the hallway, someone was standing there. Then another shape appeared beside it, and another. Children, 5 of them standing perfectly still facing the wall. Old winter coats hanging from narrow shoulders, dark shoes, pale skin almost gray in the weak yellow light. None of them moved. I called out carefully. No answer. Then one of the children slowly turned her head toward me. The movement was wrong somehow, too slow, too controlled. When the flashlight hit her face, my stomach dropped immediately. I recognized her from an old newspaper clipping locked inside the principal's office. Emily Voss, one of the missing children from 1957, still 12 years old. Her eyes looked almost black in the dark hallway, and her skin looked bloodless. But what scared me most was the expression on her face. Not fear, not anger, recognition, like she already knew who I was. Then she smiled slightly and pointed toward the far end of the hallway. There was a classroom door at the end, slightly open, warm light spilling through the crack, and from inside came a voice, a calm teacher's voice. Remain seated. I froze immediately. The children beside the walls lowered their heads together. Lesson continues. The voice sounded patient, gentle even. That somehow made it worse. Then I heard chalk scraping across a board, pages turning slowly, children whispering in perfect rhythm, not answering questions, repeating something. The teacher spoke again. Do not leave the classroom. I stepped closer to the door, every instinct in my body telling me not to look inside. But before I reached it, the room went silent, completely silent, and the classroom door slowly creaked shut on its own. That's when I decided to leave. I turned back toward the stairwell, except it wasn't there anymore. Only another hallway stretching deeper into darkness. I stopped walking because I knew exactly where those stairs should have been. But the school had changed around me. Doors led to wrong rooms, hallways curved where they shouldn't. The gym corridor looped back into itself repeatedly. I kept ending up in the same place. Same flickering light, same broken drinking fountain, same faded banner hanging above the ceiling tiles. The building felt alive now, not haunted, thinking, like it was deciding where I was allowed to go. Then the old school bell rang again, one violent metallic sound echoing through the entire building, and somewhere far below me, I felt something move underneath the floor. A deep vibration, like machinery starting underground. I finally found the first floor again, or something close to it. The boiler room door was open, warm air drifting out into the hallway. That made no sense. The boiler system had already been shut off earlier that evening. I stepped closer slowly. The room looked older than before, the pipes darker with rust, the concrete walls cracked and stained. Then my flashlight moved across the foundation wall, and I saw the carvings. Symbols scratched directly into the stone beneath peeling paint. Circles, words, shapes I didn't understand. And beneath them, children's drawings. Dozens of them. Drawings of classrooms underground, rows of desks, a giant black doorway beneath the earth. Every picture showed children standing near it, watching it, waiting beside it. That's when I remembered the old rumors people whispered around Briar's Hollow years ago. Before Blackwood County School was built, religious settlers used the mining land for underground prayer gatherings. They believed certain children could hear voices beneath the hills. Voices that taught things. Voices that promised knowledge hidden underground. Small chambers were carved beneath the earth for lessons and rituals. Then suddenly, the settlers abandoned the area completely. No explanation. Years later, the school was built directly above those tunnels, as if somebody wanted to bury whatever had been there before. Then I heard breathing behind me, very close. A young boy's voice whispered softly near my ear. You shouldn't stay after the bell. I turned instantly, and standing at the end of the hallway was my son, still wearing the same dark jacket, still carrying the same faded school backpack, exactly as he looked the night he disappeared. 20 years gone, and not a day older. Rain thundered against the windows behind me, but inside the hallway everything felt silent. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I tried to speak. Nothing came out at first. Then finally, I whispered his name. He didn't answer immediately. He just stood there watching me, and there was something wrong about his eyes. Not evil, worse, empty. Like he had been somewhere so long, he barely remembered what being human felt like anymore. Then he spoke softly. You stayed too long, and turned away. I followed him through the hallway without thinking, because there was something I had never told anyone in Briar's Hollow. My son didn't disappear somewhere else. He vanished inside Blackwood County School. The police called him a runaway, said teenagers leave small towns all the time. But I never believed that. Not after the things I started hearing inside the building. Not after the bell first rang for me. That's why I stayed working there all those years. waiting, listening, hoping maybe one night I'd finally find him again. Now he was walking only a few feet ahead of me, and I was terrified to catch up. My son led me back toward the boiler room. The hallway lights flickered weaker with every step. Then he stopped beside the old foundation wall and pointed downward. A narrow opening stood behind rusted pipes, stone stairs descending into darkness beneath the school. I had never seen them before, but somehow the school had been hiding them from me. Warm air drifted upward from below, not normal heat, wet, heavy, like breath rising from underground. My son started descending the stairs slowly. I followed him. The deeper we went, the older everything became. Concrete turned into stone, pipes disappeared. Wooden support beams darkened with age surrounded the tunnels, and somewhere below us, I could hear children whispering softly together, repeating lessons. The tunnel opened into something enormous, an underground chamber hidden beneath Blackwood County School, far older than the town itself. Massive stone walls stretched into darkness. Candles burned along narrow shelves carved into the rock. Rows of old wooden desks filled the center of the chamber, and scattered across the floor were children's shoes. Hundreds of them. Tiny black shoes, winter boots, mud-covered sneakers from different decades, as if generations of children had entered that place and never walked back out. Names were carved into the stone walls everywhere. Some faded almost beyond recognition. Others looked fresh. My flashlight passed over one name, and my knees nearly gave out beneath me. My son's name, carved into the wall beside dozens of others. At the far end of the chamber stood a giant black doorway carved directly into the earth. No door attached to it, only darkness, endless darkness. And from somewhere beyond it, I heard chalk scraping slowly across a board, pages turning, a teacher speaking calmly, the same voice from upstairs. Remain seated. The whispers of children answered together. Then I saw them, rows of children sitting silently at desks facing the black doorway, dozens of them, still, watching the darkness like students waiting for class to begin. Some wore clothing from the 1950s. Others looked far older, their skin pale, their faces expressionless. But all of them were listening, learning. That's when I understood the truth. Something beneath the hills had been teaching children for decades, keeping them there, changing them slowly over time. And Blackwood County School was built directly above its classroom. My son stood near the front row, still holding his backpack straps tightly in both hands. He looked smaller somehow standing among them, like part of him had never grown up after entering that place. I moved toward him carefully, tears burning in my eyes for the first time in years. "Come home," I whispered. He looked at me sadly, then shook his head once. "It doesn't let us leave." The moment he said that, every child in the chamber slowly turned toward me together. Perfect synchronization. Dozens of faces staring directly into the flashlight beam. And then they smiled. Not like children, like something pretending to understand how smiling works. Behind them, the darkness inside the doorway shifted slightly. Something moved inside it, huge, watching. Suddenly the school bell rang overhead, violently this time. The entire underground chamber trembled, dust falling from the ceiling, candles flickering wildly. The teacher's voice echoed from the darkness beyond the doorway. "Class dismissed." Every child stood at once. The movement happened so quickly it looked unnatural, and then they all started walking toward me, slowly, smiling. My son stayed where he was, still staring at me sadly. I ran, back through the tunnels, up the stone stairs, through the boiler room. The school around me screamed with metallic groans and ringing bells. Hallway lights exploded overhead one by one. Footsteps chased me through the darkness behind me. Children whispering, laughing softly. I barely made it outside before sunrise touched the hills. And the moment sunlight hit Blackwood County School, everything stopped. No voices, no footsteps, only silence. The building stood there completely still in the morning fog, like nothing had happened at all. I sat in my truck until sunrise, hands still shaking against the steering wheel, rainwater dripping from my coat onto the floorboards and through the windshield. Blackwood County School stood perfectly still in the morning fog, quiet, normal, like none of it had happened, like the building was pretending again. The children would arrive in a few hours, teachers unlocking classrooms, parents dropping kids off outside the front entrance. Nobody would notice anything strange. Nobody ever did during daylight. But I knew what lived underneath that school now. And I knew the bell would ring again eventually. It always did. I quit the next morning, didn't even go back inside for my things. Never returned to Blackwood County School after that night. People in Briar's Hollow asked questions for a while. I never answered them properly, because some truths sound insane the moment you say them out loud. And some places don't stay buried once they notice you've seen them. The school is still there today. Children still attend classes there every morning. The basketball games still happen in the gymnasium. Teachers still walk those same second-floor hallways. And maybe, during daylight, the building really is normal. Maybe the thing underneath sleeps while the sun is out. Maybe it waits, listening, learning, waiting for the halls to empty again. Because sometimes, during storms, late at night, people in Briar's Hollow still hear the school bell ringing through the hills. Even when the building is empty, even when the power is out. And every now and then, drivers passing the school after dark report seeing children standing at the second-floor windows, perfectly still, watching the road, watching the woods, waiting for someone to come inside. One old state trooper swore he once saw a classroom light flickering near midnight during a thunderstorm. When he looked closer, he could see silhouettes sitting at desks inside the room, rows of children, and a tall figure standing at the chalkboard teaching them. But when backup arrived minutes later, the classroom was empty. No lights, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there at all. Just faint chalk dust drifting through the darkness. And somewhere deep inside the school, the sound of children whispering softly together, repeating lessons no one should ever hear. Thank you for watching Oculus Owl. Sleep if you can, because while you're trying to forget this story, the owl is still watching.